Welcome to another Ask Kevin, and it's Wednesday night, and the sun's shining, and we're stuck indoors watching this. I know where I'd rather be, out there indeed. Anyway, thanks for giving up your evening, or at least 45 minutes of it. And we've got some really interesting, different questions tonight, and the questions range from colour, image stacking, and I can't remember what I called the other one, but it was a really crazy one. So we've got three people asking questions: Richard Rastel, who's a current masterclass student, Sharon Bust, and Tris Machala, who's one of my privately mentored students. So hello to you three, and hello to everybody else who's listening. Good number of names appearing on the screen to my left here. So I think we're going to kick off with Richard's. Let me just read it out. I'm going to bring it onto this screen in front of me so I haven't got to turn my neck so much. And it says this: I've got myself one of those 5-in-1 things. And although the diffuser bit of it is very smooth when open, the gold, silver and black and white screens have a lot of creases in them. Any idea how to smooth them out? While using them taking photos, the camera seems to pick up on highlights and the creases. So my first reaction was to contact Richard and tell him to go and buy an iron because I'm sure actually you can iron the creases out. Do you all know what a 5-in-1 is? It's quite possible you don't. Let's have a look and see what a 5-in-1 is. So a 5-in-1 is one of these things. Here they are on Amazon. This is one by Newer, and a 5-in-1 is literally a big circle. It pops out from a smaller one. You undo the zip and it all goes and explodes. And inside it, you've got 5 different things to help you with your photography. Hi, Sharon. And you got to, let's just try and click on one. You can't do that without it getting bigger. Okay, so if we look at, there's the packet comes in, and it will look something like that. And there's a zip running around the outside, and when you open it up, you get all this kind of stuff. So you get a diffusion screen in the center. You'll get a white reflector. Let's see if I can get a picture of all of them. There we go. A white reflector, a black reflector, which is great for reducing reflections, a gold shiny foil reflector, a silver foil reflector, and right at the back a white reflector. For the best part, to be honest with you, all I ever use really is the white reflector and the bit in the middle, which is the diffusion screen. Let's see if we can get a better example of what's going on here. There we go. So the white reflector I use most of the time because the white reflector, though it doesn't bounce back as much light. Let's go back a step for those who don't even know what a reflector is. So a reflector means that if you're photographing someone and there's not a great deal of light on them, perhaps they're by a window and one side's light but the other side's a bit dark, you can hold the reflector up or get someone to hold it for you or put it on a stand, and it picks up the light coming through the window, or it could be another source of light, and bounces it back onto the subject and fills in some of the shadows. And I like to use white because it gives a very soft diffuse light. But if you want more impact, then you'd use the silver foil reflector. End of day, golden hour, maybe someone with a darker skin, you might want to use the golden reflector. And the black just helps to reduce light a little bit. You put it alongside someone and less light is bounced around. And then in the middle you'll get this diffusion screen. And the diffusion screen is terrific. It's great if you're photographing someone outside when there's lots of harsh shadows about, because you can actually hold it above their head like that, around their head, and the sun will come through the diffusion screen, still light them up, but all those nasty harsh shadows disappear. Really good if you're photographing flowers in a garden. Don't know whether you ever tried doing that during a really sunny day. You get some really black shadows and some highlights, and it's quite difficult to get a decent picture. If you hold a diffusion screen above the flower, or if you do macro photography for insects, then the same thing applies. You get softer light, it's more gentle, more flattering. Anyway, Richard's question is that his foil in particular, his gold foil and his silver foil and the black, really, got creases in. Well, I would try and iron them. I really would. I'd put a sheet over the top of them and iron them so you're not actually ironing directly on the material. Or on the other hand, you could leave them popped open for a little while before you use them so they get stretched. But there's no rocket science to this. I'd just go and buy an iron. Richard, if you're married and I can't remember, your wife probably knows where the iron is. I know it's hard for us fellas, but an iron will be really useful. Okay, so just put a sheet over it and then iron on top of that sheet so you've not got the heat of the iron directly onto the foil. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Oh, I'm reading some messages here. That's the one I have. Creases and all, Richard says. That's the one he has. Okay, well, hopefully that's answered that one. That's the simple one. Okay, we'll come back out of there. And you should be able to... Oh, you're not. You should be able to see me. There we go. There we go. Good. So the next question from Sharon. Sharon Bust. Hi, Sharon. Hope you're well. Call it an iron. So look, Simon Ruffles got a sense of humour, hasn't he? Look at this. Call it an iron. Modern, and it sounds like Apple. It sounds Apple-y. Yeah. Okay. Really good. Well done. Sharon's question. I'd like to know how to get started with focus stacking, with the intention of shooting tiny insects with my macro lens. Good chance that most of you watching this won't even know what focus stacking is. Those of you who have been on a recent masterclass which ended at the beginning of this year will have done it with me. Let me try and explain. When you're photographing a very small object like an insect or a flower, the closer you get, the depth of field gets really narrow. And sometimes it's so narrow that it's impossible to photograph the entire insect and get all of it sharp. You only get one part of it sharp. And it doesn't matter how tiny you make your aperture, the depth of field never actually extends far enough to cover the whole insect. So there's no normal natural way of photographing the insect with the whole insect sharp. So you have to employ focus stacking. What is it? You take a series of images of the insect, which mustn't move, so you need it fairly dormant or dead. First thing in the morning before it wakes up is quite good, or at bedtime. They don't move very much at the beginning and the end of the day. And with your camera, you focus on the nearest point of the insect. Then you make a series of photographs, each one focusing a little bit further across the insect's body until you finally take the last shot, which is at the farthest end of the insect's body, and then you combine all the images together in software which takes the sharp bit out of every single image and combines them into one, so you end up with a single photograph from what may be 15, 20, 30, 50 different images depending on the size of the insect. And Sharon wants to know how she gets started. Well, okay, Sharon, I'm going to look out for you. Can you tell me what make of camera you've got? It'll be really helpful if you say Canon, but Nikon not so bad either. I'm watching out for that. So how do you do it? Well, one way, here's a macro lens. One way would be to focus on the nearest point of the insect, adjust very slightly your focus, take another one, adjust it a bit more. You probably can't see. Let me bring it closer. I'm moving it very slightly, adjust it a little bit more, another picture, a little bit more, another picture, a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And that works. That works. It's a bit tedious and imprecise. She's got a Sony. Bother. Okay. So you are stuck with this kind of system. There's no automated systems for you. There is for Canon and Nikon. On my right here, I have a very special little piece of kit which I'm going to show you, and it's probably what you're going to need. So let me just change the screen, and if this works properly, you should see what I use. My mouse has gone missing. There we go. Well, I just need to adjust it very slightly. Here's a tripod. It's got a flashy thing here, which is called a geared head. Geared head enables you to adjust in very minute movements across the 3 different axes that your tripod can move on. So it's left and right, up and down, and side and tilting. And on it, I've got a slider or a rack. And what happens is you take out the little center pin, you screw it onto your lens, which will be on your camera by now, by the way. Pop it in there, anchor it in place. Doesn't want to go. There we go. And let's try and get a slightly better picture, a bit more elevated. So it's all worked perfectly well, of course, before I went on air. Everything was lined up marvellously. Right, so you're pointing at the insect, which is probably just in front of you, maybe somewhere like this, and you switch off the focusing. You turn off the focusing on the lens, and with the lens you focus onto the closest part of the insect and you take a picture, and then you turn the wheel and it moves a fraction, and you take another picture, and you turn the wheel again and you take another picture, and you do this and you do completely traverse the insect. Now I'm moving it by large amounts so that you can get an idea what I'm actually doing, but in reality the amount of movement I make is tiny. It's more like this. Don't know if you can see that, it's really tiny. When you've got all the images, then you feed that into your software. Someone's saying, Eileen to Sharon, she's got one of these. Let's just put that up. So Eileen has got one of these. I think she's a friend of Sharon, and she's going to lend it to her. Isn't that nice? That's really good. That's really good. So these are called racks, or sliders, or focus racks, depending who you talk to. And they probably range anything from 50 quid to probably 150, 200 pounds. You can get motorized ones as well. You can get very sophisticated systems where you program everything in on a remote box and it moves it for you. Now, if you've got a Nikon or a Canon, things are even simpler. With a Canon or a Nikon, you can use the software that I use and plug the camera into the computer via cable, and you can set the closest and the furthest point of the insect. Press a button and then watch as the camera does this for you, automatically controlled by the computer. Click, 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 click. You just sit back, have a pint, have a hot dog, bit of cake, coffee, and once it's finished, it feeds it straight into the software and off you go. It's all done automatically and it is just a breeze. Just recently, the company which I use, the software which I use, is called Helicon Focus. They've launched something, and I can't remember the name of it, but it fits on the end of here. It fits between the lens and the body of the camera, and with a Canon or a Nikon, I'm not sure it works with other makes, I'm pretty sure it's just Canon and Nikon. It'll do it with any lens. It doesn't have to be a macro, it could be with any lens. But obviously with a macro, you're going to get closer focusing. So it doesn't matter what lens you've got. You can plug it on the end of your lens, basically press a button, and that ring that you bolt onto the end of your lens controls it for you. And again, focuses on the beginning, focuses on the end, automatically works out how many steps are needed from start to finish, and does the whole thing for you. So I'm going to take us over to the Helicon website if I can. Just bear with me while I let's see if I can get it up on here. Helicon, this is their website, and you can see there just Third one along, the Helicon FB tube. That's the tube you put on the body of your camera and plug the lens into it, and it does it all. So Helicon Focus, which is one of my, if I do this, can you see it? Yeah, Helicon Focus is the software which joins all your images together. Helicon Remote is where you plug your camera into your computer, and a computer controls your own lens by telling the lens to focus a little bit closer, takes a picture, tells the lens to focus a little bit closer still, takes a picture. Or if you want to take it out in the field and use it rather than be tethered to a computer, then you can use the FB tube. It's really very, very clever. I wonder if I click on here whether there's a little, yeah, so there's this clever little video. Let me let's see what happens when we play this. It might just kind of give you an idea. We're going to get any sound out of this. There's some dreadful music with it earlier on. There he goes, taking shots at different points, producing a range of images, and then they're all combined together for you automatically. Not quite sure what this bit is. I think it's saying that normal lenses are focused to infinity, but when you're using this little ring, it doesn't focus to infinity. You just focus between the minimum distance and the maximum distance. Very clever. Like that. That was good. So, where are we? Sharon. Any good for you? Any questions you'd like on top of that? Let me come back to me. I'm seeing here that Eileen's saying, so sorry Nippy, not on Fuji, only Canon and Nikon. Only Canon and Nikon. So if you haven't got a Canon or a Nikon, then you have to get yourself one of these things and do it manually, which is what I did for a while, and it does the job perfectly well, believe me. In fact, sometimes I actually just find it easier to put it on there and do it by hand rather than hook it up and go through the whole system. If you're in a hurry, it's a really simple way of doing it. So you take a picture, click, move it forward, click, move it forward, click, move it forward, and so on and so forth. You're happy with that, Sharon? Yeah, good. Any other questions about that? Have I covered everything you wanted to? Obviously I can't go in depth. If you want depth, you have to go on one of my workshops. But I've probably sowed the seed, and it sounds like Eileen, your friend, can probably help you anyway if she's already doing it. Right. Okay. So we've got about 20 minutes left to cover the big one. If there's no other questions on that, let's come back to the camera. So the third question is from Trish. Are you there, Trish, tonight? I think you might be. Oh, what was the gadget called again? The gadget was called, let me switch over to the... So the software is Helicon or Helicon Soft. Make the software. You can see it up here, Helicon Soft. And this particular product is called... We go back one. The Helicon FB Tube. OK for Canon, OK for Nikon. Helicon. And I've been using it, I guess, for about 4 years. And it's easy. And for those who have been on masterclass, and actually we demonstrated it being used in the classroom, I think it might have been the highlight of the years. We had a real bug. It was a dead one. No, it wasn't. No, he was alive, I think. Gosh, I can't remember. I think it was dead. It was dead. And we stuck it on the table. I was sitting at one end of the room, pressed the buttons on the computer, camera went off and did all its things, and then it went into the software, and bit by bit we could all see the various layers of the insect being built up until eventually on the screen popped one image, everything sharp. It was amazing. It was dead. Oh, you were there, Trish, weren't you? Of course you were. You came to that session. And the sliding mechanism is called, somebody said, and this one's manufactured by Castell, Castell. You can just see it there. If you just Google Castell sliders or rack or something like that, or focus rack, you'll find it. Can't remember what it cost. Bought it ages ago. Most of them are okay. If you've got heavy duty cameras, if you've got big DSLRs, you do want a fairly hefty one. If you're shooting with mirrorless, you can get away with a lighter one. But it's good to get a good steady. The tripod needs to be fairly heavy duty as well. So if you've got a flimsy tripod, go and buy another tripod. Expensive game macro, and I understand, I can completely understand why I understand. It is often thought as the most technical of all aspects of all genres of photography. There's so much you have to kind of know and understand, but you can take some really good pictures just by winging it. But if you want to go the really cool stuff with the big bug eyes and stuff like that, then it gets complicated, and you will be spending money. Expect to spend money if you want to do that. Okay. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this from Tracy Clarkson. The macro session was brilliant. Yeah, it was a really good session. There was that moment where everyone went when they saw the picture on the computer, which projected up on the big screen as well. Good. So this week I have water with me. It's not gin. Don't like gin. Can I come on to Trish's question then? And Trish said very simply, can you shed some light on colour theory? Colour theory. Okay. It's knowing what and what not to put into this, to be honest. And a lot of colour theory is unnecessary for photographers because particularly with Photoshop, the very sophisticated colour control is best suited and really targeted towards illustrators and designers and those working with colours, whereas a photographer works in a kind of different way. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap. I'm going to look at both. Now, let's pull up an image. That is colour temperature. All cameras can have little dials on them somewhere where you can control the colour temperature. What is the colour temperature? Well, the colour temperature is, let me put it this way. Throughout the course of the day, the light around us changes. When the sun's out, full bright, it's actually, if we were able to stand back and look at it without being influenced by the other factors, it's almost a kind of a bluish light. Actually, not quite as blue as clouds. Clouds are worse, and so is shade. I don't know why I said sunshine is blue. It's not. It's more of a yellowy. But anyway, when you've got an overcast day, the light appears bluer. It certainly does to the camera. If you're in the shade, the light appears bluer. If you're indoors in the evening and you've got light bulbs on, particularly incandescent lights, they come across as yellow, and you've probably seen that when you've taken pictures indoors at night and you've got this very kind of orangey yellow feel. Now, all cameras have auto white balance. Some cameras call it auto WB, some call it AWB. And for the best part, AWB does a really good job of trying to figure out what white should look like under any lighting conditions. The idea is the camera's trying to reproduce white as white regardless of what's going on around us. Now, our brains just adjust to white under any circumstances. So whether indoors with just a candle or just a light bulb, or whether in a shade or bright sunlight, or whether it's overcast, white always looks white to us. Our brain just looks at it and sorts it out. We don't have to think twice. But cameras aren't as clever, and so they have this AWB, auto white balance, which does, as I said, a pretty good job for the most part of figuring out what white should look like. Now, it doesn't cover the full range of temperatures usually, and so consequently sometimes if you leave it on auto white balance and you take a picture indoors at night and you've only got little incandescence on, the chances are it's not going to cope with that very well, and it's still going to look orangey and yellow. Let's have a look at this. Color temperature explained. So color temperature is measured in degrees Kelvin, because it is. I think it was originally taken from a blacksmith heating up a piece of metal so it's white hot, and then watching as it darkens, as the colours change as it cools down. And you've got that going on here. So the sort of daylight temperature, usually average sunny day, is about 5,500 degrees K. As it gets a little bit overcast and the sun goes in, it goes up to about 6,500, 7,000 degrees. Hazy day could be 8,000, and so on. A really clear blue sky could be as much as 10,000 K. If you go the other direction, then as you start using artificial lights, you see that it's all starting to go the other direction, and a candle might only be 1,000 degrees Kelvin. And the way that your camera deals with this is that if it detects that there's a lot of orange light creeping in because we're shooting indoors, it digitally adds blue to the photo, which blue is the opposite of orange and yellow, orangey yellow. Blue counteracts that excessive yellow effect and gives you white looking white again. That's the theory. If you're outdoors and it's overcast or hazy or in the shade, that looks quite blue to the camera, so the camera digitally adds orange to counteract it, the whole time trying to get white looking white. I think I've explained on a previous one of these sessions is that if you're shooting a sunset, which is lots of yellows and oranges and reds, the camera struggles with that a little bit, and so it's tried to actually get rid of the yellows and oranges and reds and bring some white out, but it can't do it very well. And if you want to put orange and red back into the sunset, to put back the impact into the sunset that was there in the first place, you have to physically change your settings. So the camera stripped out the orange by adding blue in to make the whites look white. You have to put orange back in, and if you pick somewhere around about here your setting for which is cloudy or shade, depending on what your camera setting's got. Not all cameras have the same settings. Some have cloudy, some have shade, some have both, and you can experiment with them to see which you like the most. If you look on the back screen of your camera when you take the picture, change your setting from cloudy to shade, and you can see the picture go orange and more orange, and you can make a decision which you prefer. So you can take control of the color balance of your image by changing the color temperature in it when you take the picture. Now in RAW, of course, once you put it into Lightroom, you can change the color balance anyway, so to some extent it's less important, but the more you can do in the camera, the better. Well, I think I was at this stage going to bring up Lightroom. There we go. So here's a picture I took in Rome. I'm standing in the Colosseum looking out the window, and if we go into the basic control panel here, you've got a control over the color balance here, and you can see that the color balance in this image is as shot. I haven't changed the color balance at all. I can, if I want to afterwards, change it to cloudy or shade, in which case it should add more orange to it, and it doesn't look any different to me. Not at all. Let's try and shade. Oh, it has gone a little bit warmer there. I don't know whether you spotted it. Let's put it back to auto. So now Lightroom's going to make a decision. Virtually no difference. So it looks like really the camera got it about right, and Lightroom's not disagreeing with it. However, you can take control yourself and push the slider up towards the orangey end to increase the orange, make it look more end of day, and the more I push it up, the more dramatic it gets. So you can see that. I'll put it back to where it was, and I can make it bluer, and that almost looks like first thing in the morning, early morning light, almost night time now. Gosh, let's put it back to where it was. But as we're playing with colour, let's go on to one of my favourite sections, which we haven't looked at in any great detail, the HSL colour. HSL stands for hue, saturation and luminance. And I think before we do that, I'm actually going to switch over to Photoshop. And I'm going to bring up this. So, hue, saturation, luminance, HSL. And I'm just going to grab my colour picker, which is up here. And this means I can pick any colour. If I click on that, that should start. Yes, it's working in there. So can you see this colour slider thing here? Sometimes people have it sort of, oops, let's try and, they'll put it there. And if I sample the blue here, you can see what's happening. It's finding the blue. If I go all the way around, it's following all the colours. And this is the hue. See this here? Hue. And the hue is the colour. So it's going from green through to yellow to red to magenta and all the way through to blue. So that's the hue. Hue basically is colour. Saturation is the density of that colour. So here the density is right, it's really zero because we've gone to white. And if you look up here, in fact, let me take it all the way up, right there, as I increase saturation, so you should see it moving along. So saturation is left to right across the top. Hue is this one here, and then luminance is how dark the colour gets. So if I click on there, you can now see it's starting to move. Whoops, I'm going off piece there, going down towards the black. So that down there, or down here, might be easier to show it down here, represents the luminance or brightness. That is your saturation, and around the outside is your hue. So hue, saturation, luminance. Let's go back to Lightroom. Here we go, hue, saturation, luminance. Luminance confuses people, it's just brightness of the colour. So look at the blue sky up here. If I push the blue up, brighten up, it just becomes very bright. If I push the other way, it goes very dark. It looks weird, but all you're doing is controlling the brightness or luminance of that colour. Now, over the last year, I've kind of picked up I've kind of done a lot of my images with a certain colour treatment that I rather like, and I haven't got bored with it yet. I know I will eventually, and you may have noticed the treatment of some of my photos that I've been posting. And what I do is I take the greens and I change the hue of the green. So if I go one way, the green goes quite yellow. If I go the other way, it goes, whoa, look at that colour. Grass and foliage is yellow and green. Yellow seems to have the most dramatic effect if you change that. If I see, look at this. If I go the other way, wow. So this is the first step to some of the more common treatments that I'm using on my own images. And then I start desaturating them. Again, the yellow, I take it down. The green, I take it down. And I'm getting to that place where it's almost a kind of a grey green foliage. I'm probably also going to reduce the brightness of the green and the yellow. That's probably too far. And we've got a really nasty over vivid orange going on here, so I'm just going to take the orange down as well. And so we have this desaturated look. I think the sky probably needs a little bit of desaturating, so I'm going to take that down. And there we have an image where it's a very subdued colour, and I kind of like it. It's not going to be to everybody's taste, but it's something I like doing. So the next time I post a picture and you can see that I've done it, you can all say, ah, I've just read a message. I'm going to just address it. Can I move it? It's, yeah. Eileen said, I thought camera white was 18% grey. No, So I have talked about 18% grey before. Let's bring up the histogram. So this is a pretty good histogram. This end is the blacks, this end is the whites. There is no peaking. It pretty much stretches right to the end. It's not far off. Both ends, and most of it's in the grey. And the camera's job when it looks at, I'm just going to reset this by the way, let's just put this back to normal, which you do by double clicking, and the camera's job is to look at a scene like this and produce a picture where there are no really high peaks in the whites, no really high peaks in the blacks, and all the grey tones are nicely represented, which we've got in this shot. It's actually perfectly balanced in many respects. You're just looking at the grey graph here, forget the red, green, blue and yellow, all that stuff, just look at the grey. And what the camera's trying to do is to expose the image so that there is what they call 18% grey, so that the mid-tones get a nice even exposure, and no heavy blacks and no heavy whites, 18% grey. And you can buy grey cards, where I've still got some, I think I've showed them on previous sessions, where you can point the camera at, and it's a kind of grey, it's lighter, it's closer to that, very similar in grey to this up here. That's 18% grey. And when you're photographing something, if you're not sure about colour, if you photograph a grey card first, keep the grey card when you export all your images to Lightroom, and let me show you. So let's assume this is 18% grey. Let's assume this grey here, which isn't grey, was the card you held in front of you and took a picture of. What you would then do is you go up to here, grab your colour picker, click on here, and what it does, it turns that pure grey with no colour inflections at all. It's pure grey. There's no reds to it, there's no blues to it. It just turns it to grey, and of course when you turn that colour grey, every other colour in the image changes with it. So if you've taken a picture of a grey card and you use this colour picker and click that right at the beginning, you then have the correct setting for the colour balance for all the other pictures you've taken in that situation. I hope that makes sense. So that grey card is the reference. You know that grey should look grey. You photograph it, then you continue shooting in the same place, the same lighting, load them all onto your Lightroom, take a reading from that grey, make a note what the colour temperature is, in this case it's 3569, and then you apply that 3569 to all the other photos in Lightroom on that shoot, and the colour will be corrected for all of them. She understands. She has just said, the lady has just spoken, and she says, that explains it. Thank you. That's great. Right. So Trish, was there anything deeper you wanted to know about colours? I mean, one of the things I didn't really talk about, let's go back to Photoshop, is that you don't have to display in Photoshop the colours like this. This is how it's been for a while, but you can choose to have a colour wheel, which is this, and let's make it a bit bigger. And the colour wheel is a bit like this thing. Here you've got a little, this tells you what colour's been selected. So if I wanted a red, I click on the red and it goes to the red. If I want to go around to the cyan, that's cyan, it's not magenta, is it? Which way runs which? Ah, who knows? That's green anyway. That's blue. And the thing is, you've got this circle, and one of the advantages this has over the colour square is that you get a much greater sense of the continuation of colour. If we go back to the colour square, or the cube, you've got no sense up and down here that the red continues on the end and it just goes round and round again. If we go back to the circle, the colour wheel, then it does. And then here is your saturation, and you've got the saturation slider moving up and down here. So if I take it all the way down there to totally desaturated, or right to that end for completely desaturated, and then here is your luminance, dark, through to full brightness of colour. But you know, as a photographer, we're not really going to use this very much unless we're maybe designing something to go on Facebook as an advertisement for our business, where colours are important. One of the other advantages of this is that if you've got a, let me just put in the green from the HS Hampshire School of Photography green. I'm just going to type it in. Bom, 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 bom. Can't see it. Can't see it. Can't see it. It's there. There it is. It's that one. So that green there is the HSP green. And if I'm in green, if I look across the other side of the triangle, I've got the complementary colour to it. So if I want the complete opposite colour for any reason for design or to cancel it out, I know that the opposite colour of that green is that sort of ready, is that cyan or magenta? Okay, now, for the life of me, for the years I've done this, I never remember. I'm old. I'm sober this week, but I'm old. Anyway, whatever colour you're working on, it's easy to see what the opposite is. So if you've got a really kind of blue light and you want to counterbalance it and counteract it, add a bit of yellow. If you've got a lot of red light, counterbalance it by a little bit. I think that's cyan, isn't it? Whatever. Anyway, you get the point. You get the point. What's Trish said? She says, "Yeah, Trish, you always ask simple questions. That's great." Okay, so we've kind of done our 45 minutes. Any last minute questions before we bring the session to an end? So quite different this week. Practical and sort of going off piece a little bit and covering stuff we don't normally cover. Any other questions? What she said here, I think I'll have to wrap my head around for now. I'll have to watch this video again and again. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well that is it. That's Ask Kevin for this week. There'll be another one next week. Once the academy, let's come back to me. Once the academy is up and running, and Matt's now doing a lot of work on it, then it's likely that I won't be able to do Ask Kev on the Facebook group, as well as all the online teaching and webinars on the academy. So this may stop. I'm not sure I'll phase that completely. Because there's going to be regular webinars on the academy, I might just take snippets out and put them on the Facebook page. So there's a little bit of free teaching there for those who want it, but it'll never be as thorough as it will be for those on the academy. And what we are about to launch on the academy, and I saw the web page today, and he's just finalising the payment section, is something we're calling a founders. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a glimpse. Let's put this up on here and change over to that. So there will be 20 places for 20 HSP Academy founders, lifetime membership. And the lifetime membership would include all kind of extra bonuses that the other members won't have. But you can see the price there already. Oh, that's all you're going to see. I'm sure you're going to play the video back there. But you can see only 20 places will be available. First come, first serve. And the first 5 people to sign up will get a free VIP photo shoot with a model. In the studio probably. Unless it's on location. But in either way, it'll be a really cool shoot and you'll learn an awful lot. And on top of that, there'll be an extra 15% discount on any future workshops you want to book into. And you get a special founders badge on your profile as well to say you were one of the first 20 members to join. So the price will be, those are the prices. So once Academy's up and running, it's going to be $13.50 a month, or if you pay a year in advance, it only works out to £9 a month. But for 250 quid, you can be a lifetime member. Lifetime for 250 quid. Once you're in, that is it. You don't look back. Anyway, more about that in due course. Let's come back to me. Why not? Thank you, Nippy. Great tutorial, good tutorial. Thank you very much. Right, guys, I'm going to end it all. Thanks again. See you in a week's time. Have a great week. Keep taking those pictures. See ya. Bye.